Good morning, everybody. My name is Dr. Emily Ives. I am the Program Director of the Veteran Resource Center at UCLA. And today we're really fortunate to have Rob Schwartz. He is the Dean of Admissions and Financial Aid for the UCLA School of Law. And then we also have Zach Sobel, who is a veteran himself and a student at the School of Law and has worked at the UCLA VA Legal Clinic. I guess, Rob, just want to kind of offer you kind of an opportunity to welcome the group, and if there's anything else you'd like to share with them about yourself or about the law school, we'd love to hear about it.
Sure. Well, thanks, Emily. Thanks for having us today. It's great to have you all here. Thank you all for your service, and it's exciting to see that so many people are interested in going to law school. I myself am not from California. I actually grew up on the East Coast in New Jersey, and spent most of my life on the East Coast until about 14 years ago when I moved here to take this job at UCLA. And I've been doing law school admissions now for more than 20 years. So I'm really happy to have a frank discussion today and answer any questions that you have about the process. But I also don't feel like you should feel this is your only opportunity to interact with us. So I encourage you to stay in touch as you go through the process, as you think of other questions. And I know these are not normal times. I hope you're all safe and healthy, but I do want to let you know that we do offer virtual tours of the law school right now. Hopefully soon we'll be able to offer in-person tours. But if anybody wants to sign up for one of those, I'm happy to provide my email, my contact information, so you're welcome to follow up and maybe go on a virtual tour with an admissions advisor and or with a current student who can also help answer your questions about the school. And hopefully we'll be back. We're going to be operating in a virtual world this fall, but hopefully in the spring we will be back in person, and you're welcome to come in and observe a class. If you've never done that, try to get some sense of what you're getting yourself into. Hopefully you'll still be interested in going to law school after that, but I think it's a good idea to have some sense of what you're getting into. So
Great. Thank you so much. Now I'm going to turn it over to Zach.
Okay. Hi, everybody. I'm Zach. I graduated in 2013 from Princeton. I did ROTC there, and I entered the active duty Army. I was active duty in the Army for 4 years. I was an 89 Echo and cross-trained as a 91 Alpha. So I did bomb disposal and ordnance logistics. Most of my career was on the logistics side, though, because of the sequester in 2013. So although I was trained to do some of the bomb disposal stuff, I didn't get to do it too much. But have some base knowledge if you want me to ruin spy movies or something like that for y'all. After that, I was in Korea for a year with the Army on the demilitarized zone at Camp Casey. I'm sure some folks here have maybe been to that area. After Camp Casey, I was at Fort Lewis for 2 years, where I was with 1-2 Stryker Brigade, which is an infantry combat brigade attached to them. And then after that, I left the Army. I worked for Amazon for a year. Realized that I was done with operations pretty much, and I wanted a really good change in careers that would allow me to think more. So I thought about an MBA or law school. I ended up picking law school. And Dean Schwartz is a little bit of being humble here. He's probably the best admissions dean in the game. It's amazing. You send him an email and he responds within seconds. It's definitely an impressive thing. Other deans will ignore you. He will not. So he's awesome in that regard. And since law school, I've been the president of the Veterans Law Society for like 2 years now. Don't be that impressed. There's only like 10 of us or so that we definitely want you at UCLA so we can grow that community. And then I've also been in charge of our VA pro bono program through what's called Intro, which is a student-led pro bono initiative. Pro bono, for those of you who don't know, means for the good. So it's for free legal services for mostly impoverished folks, and in this case, veterans. And then I've also worked for the school-led VA clinic, which is for academic credit, but it's a very similar thing. It's just you work on more complex veteran pro bono matters. We did claims with the VA trying to get people benefits. I'll be glad to talk about that if any of you have questions about that program or about law school in general as a veteran. And I'd be glad to talk to you about anything you want to know from the student perspective So, and same with Dean Schwartz. My email is, always available if you want to send me an email. I believe it's fine under the veteran group at UCLA if you need to find it. But if anybody wants, I can put it into the chat, and you can feel free to send me an email. If some of you are still active duty, you can find me on Global. I'm still in the Army Reserve. So you have my name there. So you can always send me an email via the military email system too, if you still have access to Global. But yeah, looking forward to this event. Let me know if you need anything.
Sure, we could probably both jump in on that. We could spend a lot of time talking about legal careers. I mean, there's so many things you can do with a law degree. Most of our students go into the private practice of law when they graduate. So typically, 60 to 70% will get a job at a law firm doing the private practice of law. But others go into the public interest field, governmental jobs. Some will go off and do clerkships for a judge. And some people will decide to pursue a more non-traditional career, but generally most of our graduates are going to go off and practice law, at least initially. In terms of areas that the law school is known for, I actually happen to think we have an incredibly diverse and deep curriculum. I think one of the more challenging things, I don't know if Zach will agree with this, but I think, choosing what to take in your second and third year, there's probably 200 classes to choose from. Zach mentioned the Veterans Clinic, but there's about 40 different experiential classes. You can study abroad if you want with one of our partner schools. You can do an externship. And then there are 7 different areas you can actually specialize in if you want to. So business and corporate law is one of those. Entertainment law is another. We have a critical race studies program, a public interest law program, a law and philosophy program, an environmental law specialization, and an international law specialization. And there's also a certificate program in trial advocacy. So there's just a lot, again, probably about 200 classes to choose from in the upper years. And you're going to want to take at least some classes that'll help prepare you for the bar exam, assuming you're going to be going on to practice law. But there's a lot to choose from. You want to add anything to that, Zach?
Yeah, I mean, so I just went through the job recruiting process myself, coming from the law school. And I think that, as Dean Schwartz said, almost everyone, and no, you don't have to declare specialization. I'll hit that since I'm talking now. I don't have a specialization. I just take whatever I want and it doesn't matter. It's fine. You'll still graduate with the JD. But first off, I'll say, if you don't know you want to be a lawyer, law school is a major investment. So I don't know if I would follow that route if you're not positive you want to be a lawyer. There are a lot of opportunities with a JD that don't require you to practice law. But if you should enter law school wanting to practice law, at least for a bit, that'd be an experience you definitely want to have. Because most people who go to UCLA Law work, as Dean Schwartz said, probably for a law firm to start. Another, I'd say 10 to 30% of the folks will work practicing law for pro bono organizations. And then about, 10% or something like that will go to clerk, but then they still go on, like, I'm going to be clerking, but I'm still planning on working for a firm right after I finish clerking. So those aren't really mutually exclusive. It's more of a stepping stone so that you're a better lawyer for your law firm. But whatever you do, I would really recommend, if you're considering law school, you should want to practice law for at least a little bit, because there's a lot of different ways to enter other fields if you're not interested in like if you want to just work for a company, go to business school, or not, like you can do that as a lawyer. There are plenty of former lawyers who work on the business side of things, but it's definitely not a requirement. It could be useful, but it's not a requirement. And most of those people wanted to practice law at least for a bit. So that's like kind of my thought. But if you go to law school, you should expect to be working when you graduate, and almost everyone does to a person, either in a pro bono organization doing law, type of law firm, or some people do government, either local or federal government. Though the federal positions are really competitive, so don't enter law school assuming you're going to get a federal position right off the bat. Like, it's extraordinarily competitive to get into the federal honors program. It does happen, but it's very rare. You need, like, from UCLA particularly, or any school, like a 4.0 or something. Like, I tried, they didn't even respond to me, like, and I'm a veteran like you all will be. So, like, just be aware of that. that it's very competitive. But local government, prosecutor, public defender, those are awesome jobs. And county attorneys, that I don't know how many of our folks do that, but they're wonderful learning opportunities.
Yeah, sure. I think preparing for law school, by just going to college, getting your degree, you're going to be prepared for law school. I think you can major in a wide variety of subjects and be a competitive applicant to law school and a successful law student. I do recommend taking as many courses or a good number of courses which will develop, which will involve a lot of writing and reading, research, because those are a lot of the skills that lawyers use. In terms of extracurricular activities, I always recommend don't try to do things that are going to impress an admissions committee. Just be yourself, engage in activities that you enjoy doing. Some of the factors that are important to an admissions committee are things like public service, community service, leadership, and you all exemplify that just by who you are. So, beyond that, I would engage in any activities that you enjoy, and that will stand out to the admissions committee when you're applying to law school.
The only thing I have to add to that is, as far as preparing for law school, I mean, having worked and gone to undergrad, there's nothing really that prepares you for that 1L year. 1L year, by the way, is not that scary. It is hard, but it's because everyone's competitive. You're trying to do the best you can so that you set yourself up. You only have 3 years of grades to set yourself up for the best you can. And UCLA is very, very cordial, and everyone gets along really well. We don't have any of that paper chase crap. But that being said, everyone's still aware, even if you're nice to each other, that we are graded on a curve. If I was one change I could change, that would be law school shouldn't grade on a curve, because it makes people stressed out more. Because the law school classes themselves they're very interesting. They're not outrageous, though. It's not harder than anything you did in undergrad. It's just that you are going to be with a lot of really smart people. And I think that's the best thing that you can work on, is just being empathetic and humble going in, and being aware that everyone in your class at a school like UCLA or any of our peers is brilliant. So be aware that you are not smarter than anyone else in the room, and that's okay, and learn from them and have that experience of learning from them. You can always disagree with your peers, but I think that's the most important thing, is to come in hungry and humble, and you'll do great in law school. And also listen to your professors. If your professors say you should write like this on the exam, they're not doing it for their health, right? Listen to them. A lot of people, including myself, don't listen to the professors as they should when they're telling them the hints for their exams, which is kind of funny. And the other thing I'll say is that when you come to a law school, you'll have practice exams. Take them. Again, the professors aren't letting you see their practice exams for their health. They're doing it to help you succeed. And you'd be shocked by the number of people that just look at their outlines, which are basically your class notes, and go to the exam cold, and they don't do well their first semester, because you're not tested on what your notes look like. You're tested on how much knowledge you can pump onto a paper in 4 hours, right? 3 hours. So the only way to get good at that is to practice it. And the professors know that, so they provide practice exams. So it's my only thoughts. I wouldn't really stress too much about preparing for law school. Do well in your undergrad. Enjoy doing whatever extracurriculars they are, whether they're sports or debate, or if you're in the Army Reserve or whatever it is. Just excel in that, as Dean Schwartz said, and you'll be fine.
Sure. There's a lot of law schools in this country, which is really exciting. I think when you're just beginning the process, hopefully can be really excited about it. There's probably 200 law schools in the country. So there's a lot to look at. I think in terms of, when you take the LSAT, I do recommend taking it as early as possible and applying as early as possible, because many law schools make admissions decisions on a rolling basis. So if you can get your application in early, you will increase your chances of admission at many law schools, not all. But that said, you definitely don't want to just walk in and take the LSAT. It's an exam it's an important part of the admissions process. You want to be prepared for it, or the GRE, whichever you choose to take. Most of our applicants still take the LSAT. And so you want to spend the time preparing for it, and you want to take it when you're ready. At the same time, most law schools are going to put a lot of weight on the higher score. Now, unless you really enjoy standardized tests, you don't want to take the test more than once. So you want to go in with the idea that you're going to take this test once, but hopefully you'll feel a little more relaxed knowing that if you don't have a good day, if you don't perform up to what you know you're capable of performing, you could take the test again. And if you're doing this a little bit earlier in the process, you're going to give yourself more time. But I guess the other point I'm trying to make is that, you know, yes, you should apply early if you can, but you're better off applying a little bit later with a better LSAT score than rushing to get your application in when our application opens on September 1st. So we begin accepting applications in early September. Our deadline is February 1st generally. And so, you know, my advice, if possible, would be to try to apply by January 1st or December 15th, somewhere in that range, just not to wait to the last minute. We had over 6,000 people apply to the law school this year, and more than 1,000 of them came in within the last 48 hours of our deadline. That is not ideal time to apply. Yeah, I mean, I don't think we've seen any major change in terms of requirements or admissions standards. I would say there are some law schools out there, including UCLA, that have extended their application deadlines, have tried to be a little more accommodating to people that have been impacted by COVID. But we do want to do that, but at the same time, it's a challenge. I mean, just this morning before I joined you, we got an email from somebody with a very serious situation who was asking if they could still apply. Now, the law school begins next Thursday for orientation. We said, yes, you know, we will read your application, but it's going to be hard to get admitted, you know, this late in the process. But we're happy to at least have the admissions committee take a look at it and consider it. A lot of people have been asking me, have we received more requests to defer admission? And so is the next cycle going to be more competitive? And so far, we haven't seen that. We have seen more requests for people to defer because of COVID, but we've seen less requests to defer for other reasons, like I just got a job and I want to work some longer. So we really haven't deferred more people than we typically do. And so I know it's not going to impact our admissions process more in the coming year. There's not a checklist or a point system. It really is a holistic review process. There are many goals we have when we try to assemble a class, and grades and test scores are one component of that. They're an important component of it. The law school's ranked in part based on our median scores, so they're important, but we also admit people with a wide range of scores because we're looking to do a lot of things, right? We want to admit people and enroll a class who are going to succeed academically, so that's very important. As Zach mentioned, we want to enroll a class of people who are going to be collegial and collaborative. We want to enroll a class of people who have a wide range of backgrounds and experiences, who ideally will come together and benefit from being around one another and learning the law together. So besides academics, you know, some of the factors that we look at that are important are things like work experience, leadership, community service, socioeconomic background, and disadvantage and obstacles that people have overcome in their lives, and also why people are interested in going to law school. Which of our programs are they interested in? UCLA has an optional question on the application, which asks, are there any of our programs that you're particularly interested in that you think you could contribute to? And I don't think you should answer that just for the sake of answering it, but if there is a program at UCLA that you're interested in, that's a great opportunity for you to talk about it. You know, maybe you want to help veterans. Maybe you want to be in the Veterans Clinic. Maybe you want to fight climate change and be in our EMIT environmental law program. Whatever it is, that's a good opportunity to express yourself there, because we're also looking to bring in a class with a wide variety of interests in the law. First of all, UCLA, I don't know if you all know this, but UCLA, the university, generates more applications to the nation's law schools than any other college or university in the United States. And so UCLA Law School, like many law schools, gets a lot of applications from UCLA. I don't have the figures exactly in front of me, but I would estimate that we might get 600 or 700, as many as that many in a year out of 6,000 just from UCLA itself. Now this year we're enrolling about 40 of 300 incoming students who have their undergraduate degree from UCLA. That's far and away our #1 feeder school. The second most popular this year is Berkeley with 18. So UCLA far and away is our #1 feeder school. If you look at the number of applicants overall to UCLA and how many were admitted last year, and if you look at the number from UCLA and how many were admitted, it's very similar. It's never going to be identical, but it's always within a 1, 2, or 3 percentage points of each other, either higher or lower, and that it depends on the applicant pool each year. So the statistics don't back up that rumor. It is not any harder to get into UCLA if you went to UCLA. But I surmise perhaps that rumor comes from the fact that we get hundreds of applicants from UCLA, just like we get thousands of applicants from everywhere. And we unfortunately have to deny and turn away a lot of highly qualified candidates. So people may think, oh, I didn't get into UCLA. Well, that's because I went to UCLA. Well, that's not necessarily true. We just had to make some difficult decisions. So hopefully that clears up that rumor.
And sorry to jump in, I just anecdotally, like, there's a lot of double Bruins. So like, I was shocked by that. So like my undergrad, like Princeton straight up told us before we left, it's like, we don't admit Princetonians. We think you should go elsewhere for grad school because we expect you to have a diverse academic background. You know, like schools that do that are pretty open about it, that's what they believe. But like, definitely, like, there's a lot of double Bruins. I think also like people who really like UCLA and were really hoping to go to UCLA Law just get more disappointed. Like, had I been rejected by UCLA, it would have been like all the other schools that rejected me, like, oh, well, like, you know, like I wasn't living there at the time. It was like a school I was excited about, but it, you know, just like Harvard or Stanford, they reject you, just move on, right? And I think like for them though, if you're already living in Westwood and you have a friend circle and you really don't want to leave LA, you know, it's a lot more of a, you know, kick in the leg to be told that, hey, I'm not going to be able to go to UCLA Law. So they get much more upset about it. So I think also that emotional aspect is one thing that leads to that perception, but it's definitely not true. Like I am shocked every day by the number of double Bruins I see.
We even will invite you. We have a special admitted student program for double Bruins. We'll give you a nice dinner. So we want you.
I highly recommend that you all take whatever brand of LSAT prep that you want. I know they're expensive. I paid it myself, right? It's not fun. But you got to it's a test that's going to determine a lot about your life. The law is a very prestige-oriented thing. So the higher, the better the law school you go to in the area you want to practice, the better off you are for getting the type of jobs and opportunities you're looking for. And for better or worse, I think for worse, but it doesn't matter. It's the system is what it is. The LSAT really is one of those things that, as Dean Schwartz said, they have to worry about because the ranking system worries about it. And, you know, like once you're done with undergrad, you can't really change your GPA, right? Like your GPA is what it is. You know, hopefully it's high, but if it's not, you can't make it higher once you've graduated. So your only thing that you can affect at that moment is your LSAT or your GRE. So maximizing that is important. And that can mean taking a test or not taking a test, it can mean taking the class. So I did, it was worth it for me and I highly recommend it. I know it's not fun to pay for them, but it is something that is important because you want to be prepared for that test because it's at the moment you're applying. Basically, that and the essay are the only two things you can control. You can't control the undergrad GPA. You can't control anything that was else in the past, but you can control that. So highly recommend taking those classes and maximizing it. And then once you're done with those, buy practice test books and just take practice test, practice test, practice test. And as Dean Schwartz says, today is different than it used to be before. Like, you know, back in the day, I don't even know, it wasn't my generation law student. You could like take the LSAT once or twice and whatever it was. Now you can take it over and over. So if you're not happy with your score, you know, study more and try again. The score is really important. One of the few things you can control. So that's my view on it. So yeah, I think that's probably the most important aspect that you should focus on once you finished undergrad. For those of you still in undergrad, the most important thing is your grades, because if you have high grades, that can help you if you don't get the best LSAT score. But if you're done with undergrad, it's the only thing you can control that in the essay. So highly recommend you study for it.
Well, I think, as I was saying earlier, again, with regard to, there's not like a formula we check off, like, oh, here's, you get so many points for this GPA. When we report our median GPAs, when we report our 25th median and 75th percentile GPAs, that's the undergraduate GPA. That's the GPA that we're ranked on by the lovely entity known as US News. But graduate, the fact that you have a graduate degree is definitely a plus in the admissions process, and the committee will consider that work and those grades, and success in that program could certainly make up for lower, not as strong performance as an undergrad. Mm-hmm. So it's when I was talking about all the factors we consider, there's always factors I leave out. So that's a perfect example. Having an advanced degree is something the committee values. Being a first-gen applicant is something the committee values. Having a STEM background is something the committee values. There are many factors, but those are some others. So a little bit. I mean, the LSAT Flex is relatively new. It's started being offered once the LSAT could no longer be offered in person. So you can take the LSAT from the comfort of your own home. My understanding is there's a company I think it's called Proctor University. So you are being watched as you take this to make sure you're not cheating. It is shorter than the regular LSAT, I think by at least one section, but it is still a valid test to take for law school, and all law schools are giving it full and due consideration in the admissions process. So my understanding is that, at least for the foreseeable future, that's how the LSAT is going to be given. Now, most people have positive letters that are sent in, but not all. So my first piece of advice is, when you ask somebody to write you a letter of recommendation, they should be incredibly excited and enthusiastic about that. And if you sense any bit of hesitation, run, don't walk away. This is not, you can get somebody to write you a positive letter to law school, and only know who knows you best. What you want is somebody who has seen you demonstrate the skills that are important to us in the admissions committee. So all the things that we're looking at. So academic ability, the skills that you'll need as a lawyer, right? So if you've had a faculty member who you did a great research paper for, or you did very well in the class. We want somebody who knows both your academic abilities and your personality, who can speak a little bit to the kinds of things, going back to what Zach mentioned about people being collegial and collaborative and getting along well. I guess playing well in the sandbox would be another way to put it. And you would be surprised, although the majority of letters are positive, there are definitely some doozies out there that I cannot believe people didn't realize, would be coming in. On the other hand, there's many letters that are just fine, they're average, but then there are some that really go above and beyond. They're really detailed and lengthy and provide specific examples. And then, there are some letters that people think are going to be impressive to the admissions committee based on who wrote them. Maybe it's a politician, maybe it's a judge, or a lawyer who lived next door to you and is friendly with your family, but they don't know you all that well. And those are not good letters to get. So it is not about who is writing the letter. It's more about how this person knows you and has seen, and how much they've seen you demonstrate the skills you're going to need to succeed in law school and as a lawyer.
One thing I'll jump into
Okay.
from a military perspective is don't hesitate. I did. And like, I mean, I got into a good law school. Like maybe Dean Schwartz, it wasn't helping. I don't know. You can tell me. I had a colonel who, he was a major and I worked for him as a staff officer, but he knew me really well. And, you know, I'll be honest now that I'm already in, he showed me the letter beforehand because that's the way a lot of Army officers work, right? Like, yeah, is this what you need? You know, and so like, you having a military recommendation definitely can help. It helped me, I believe. And like, keep in mind, you know, so the people you might think would be best to write you your recommendation, maybe a junior officer, if you're former enlisted you work for, they get promoted too, right? Like I was a second lieutenant at one point and I knew a lot of my E5s really well. Now I'm a captain, right? That looks a lot more impressive than second lieutenant, of course. But I can still write very well to what one of my, you know, junior enlisted or senior enlisted or whatever it was did to impress me. And I've written recommendations. A lot of those folks got into great schools, not for law school. That's all been for undergrad, but don't hesitate. You know, if you know you had a kick-ass, sorry for cursing, you had a kick-butt lieutenant who you really trust, who knew you really well, they're probably a captain now. Don't hesitate to have them write you a letter of recommendation. Because they're still a junior officer. Like first and foremost, most civilians don't know military ranks that well. So if they hear captain and be like, oh, that sounds important, right? Like even though if you were Air Force or Army, you know, like, man, the captain's a captain, right? But so those are some of the things that you know, don't hesitate to, as Dean Schwartz said, ask people who know you. Like, I mean, very few people may know you as well as a lieutenant, and some of you may not have a former lieutenant that you do that well, but don't hesitate to ask those military supervisors. Now, I believe they still want 2 academic recs. Make sure you provide those, but it doesn't hurt to add a 3rd one from a former supervisor that was in the military, if they can speak well to who you are and what you can do. And they can speak a lot to what Dean Schwartz was talking about, your teamwork. You know, like I have a lot of sergeants who I can say like, they would do anything to help anybody in our organization. And that, you know, that's like an NCO type thing that some of you were. But like, it's something that really speaks to what Dean Schwartz is talking about. It's like, this is somebody that would put their lives on the line for their peer. That's going to be powerful if Dean Schwartz is looking for somebody that's a team player, right? Because who else can say that? So like, don't hesitate to ask for those military recs. Now, maybe Dean Schwartz will be like, no, we don't want military recs, but that would be my recommendation.
No, those are fine. I think, you know, again, it's what they say and how detailed they are, and a solid letter of recommendation from the military is a great thing to do. And just to address Patricia and Nathan's questions, how early should we ask for letters of recommendation? Should we ask for them now, even though we plan on applying for next fall? Sure. I mean, I think it's always good to start as early as possible. You definitely don't want to be walking into somebody's office saying, I need this tomorrow. The deadline is coming up. And the Law School Admissions Council, for those that don't know, it has a letter of recommendation service. So you can sign up for an account, you can store your letters there and have them ready for when you apply. And with regard to Nathan's question about how do we weigh them from university professors versus community college professors versus work supervisors, we really don't weigh them. Again, it's not about who writes them, it's about what they say. So a really great letter from a community college professor who knows you better than a university professor who doesn't know you that well would be, in my opinion, far better than the one who doesn't know you as well. And same thing with work. Now, we don't specifically say that you have to have X number from a professor or from a work supervisor. So we really leave it up to you to think about who is going to write the strongest letter. That said, if you're a relatively recent or current student, I think it could be a mistake not to have at least one academic letter because, again, you might be admitted without it, but we might be wondering why there isn't at least one academic letter. But a work supervisor is could be a great choice. Hopefully that helps us too. Totally. I was going to say, if you get to know your TA better, they often can write a much stronger letter. Sometimes I'll see a letter from both, like the professor writes the letter but says, I want to say the significance of this grade, and now I'm going to reproduce for you what the TA thinks, or just a letter from a TA is fine. Absolutely.
Okay.
And get to know your professors if you can. Go to office hours on occasion, get to know them.
I know, I think sometimes maybe the Zoom world might be a little bit easier to connect with the professors.
Another thing is, like, don't hesitate to ask for, like, having been more recently on the other side of that table asking for recommendations, don't hesitate. Like, professors know it's part of their job, right? They're not going to get offended, and if they really can't speak to you, they're going to say no. So definitely don't hesitate to ask professors. And then one strategy, I did it, and it goes to what Dean Schwartz was saying. You ask your TA, and the TA, because they usually know the professor really well, will just write the letter, and then the professor will put their letterhead on it. That's a common thing too, is that the TA who knows you well will put it, but so it looks fancier and you have the professor saying it, then the professor signs it. That's common, as Dean Schwartz just said. So, like, don't hesitate to ask the TA. TAs are great. And then the TA will offer, if they're like, oh, like, Professor so-so likes to sign those letters from our class, so he'll sign it. You know what I mean? That's common. That's what happened to me. I asked the TA, and the TA said, oh, I think the professor will sign it. Let me go ask him. Yep, the professor will sign it. Have a nice day. And those are probably the ways to go about it, is don't hesitate. They know it's part of the job, so don't think it's weird to ask for recommendations.
Yeah, the law school only offers a full-time program. There are definitely part-time programs out there. I do think you have to think carefully about that. I think it can be a challenge to work and go to law school. But if you're looking to do that, there are part-time programs out there. We just don't offer one. And to answer, I think, Race's question, I mean, I don't really think the application process is all that different. If you're going to apply to a part-time program, you're still going to take the LSAT. You're still going to need letters of recommendation. But I would encourage you to perhaps ask that question that you're interested in. And then in terms of the joint degrees, I don't know what the specific question is, but we do offer a number of them. We do have the joint JD MBA. We have the Masters of Public Health, Masters of Public Policy, urban planning, social work. There's quite a few. But very few students do them when push comes to shove, because it's an extra year, it's more money. It may not necessarily add much to your career in terms of what you are looking to do. And if you're out of school like UCLA, you can take courses in these other departments for credit towards your degree anyway. So you could be at the law school and take some courses at Anderson if you wanted to. That'll count towards your degree, but you don't have to formally get an MBA. And we have a huge corporate law program. So, I mean, we can put you in touch with a student who's doing a joint degree, but boy, I think it's probably not more than 10 or 15 out of 1,000.
Yeah, I'll jump on that. Like, Dean Schwartz is right. Like, in also the ones that do joint degree programs, I have found a lot of them just end up going the traditional law route anyways. A lot of them are working at firms or for pro bono organizations. And it's just like, you didn't need the extra year. It's up to you, I mean, ultimately, but I don't think it adds particularly a lot of value onto the JD to have an MBA JD. It can, and it's good to know from the organizations that you're interested in if they do value that. But for the most part, an organization will be fine hiring you as a JD. You don't need the MBA credential. You don't need the public health credential. But if you want it, go for it. Particularly, like, I know some of you on the GI Bill, you get 4 years, so why not? If you really love school. Me, I can't wait to get going on my life again. So for me, it was definitely a no. But for some folks, maybe it's something they want to do, especially if someone wants to be an academic. If you want to be an academic, that's when dual programs, particularly PhD JDs, can be very helpful.
Yeah, I could just quickly say, I feel badly, very early on, there was a question about becoming a law professor, and, we could do a whole separate session on that. But generally, quickly, you want to go to the best law school you can. You want to do as well as you can. You want to join a student-edited journal like Law Review or another one, and perhaps publish a scholarly article. You want to try to do a clerkship. Those are just some quick tips on becoming a law professor.
So that depends on your VA percentage. So I was 100% covered by the GI Bill. Not everyone will be, it depends. Like, so if you had a scholarship from ROTC, if you saw combat, like, there's a lot of various aspects that get calculated into your VA status for the post 9/11 GI Bill. Also, if you've used it for undergrads, another factor. But in the end, if you have 100% eligibility and you have years left, then the GI Bill covers 100% of UCLA law tuition, and you get paid book stipends and you get paid a living stipend of about $3,000 a month. It's a very great deal. I love it. It's made my life incredibly easy. I'm graduating debt-free. That being said, some of you maybe have utilized your GI Bill. You're not going to be able to use that, and then Dean Schwartz can speak to the UCLA side of things. Some of you may only have a 70% GI Bill because, say, you got an ROTC scholarship or some other scholarship from the military that reduces that eligibility. If you have a certain percentage of the GI Bill, then you're going to get that direct percentage taken off of your expenses. So if you are, I believe if you've served 90 days in the military, you get like 70% or something like 65%, I don't know. Then it'll be whatever UCLA tuition is, and then you multiply that by 0.35, I guess would be the remainder if you have 65%, and that will be your expenses. But you don't get the living stipend or anything like that. So the 100% is where you want to be, but if you have the 65, it's still a great deal. You're just not going to get the living stipend from that. Does that make sense to everybody? And then for private schools, it's a little bit different. They have the Yellow Ribbon program, but my friends who were full 100% GI Bill, I haven't heard of any private schools not letting them go for free. Like the Yellow Ribbon programs are very generous, but it is something that if you go to a private school like USC, for instance, that you're gonna have to engage their admissions folks, because it's just something that our side, being a public school, UCLA doesn't deal with. For me, it was really easy. I handed them my paper from the VA saying it's 100% eligible, and that was it. Everything else has been taken care of by them. I've never had to deal with it again. So it's a really easy process if you have the eligibility.
I also did want to mention that if you are a dependent of a disabled veteran and eligible for the Cal Vet fee waiver, that will also pay for all the mandatory tuition and fees associated with the program. Now, sometimes there's a question about the deposit associated with the law school. UCLA is able, as long as the deposit goes towards the cost of tuition, then we can bill the VA for it. However, like say, fall quarter is $10,000 and the deposit's $2,000, and the remainder $8,000 is due in the fall term, then we can bill the VA for the $10,000. But if the deposit is not associated with the tuition cost, then that is not an expense that's covered by the GI Bill or Cal Vet. So
our deposit goes towards tuition, and we can always work with anybody if there's financial hardship to waive that. And also, I should just say, if for whatever reason your funding through the GI Bill doesn't cover everything, we offer need-based scholarships, merit-based scholarships. So probably 80% of our students are getting some form of scholarship assistance. We provide accommodations, but we also work with the university. So it may be the same office that you've already been familiar with. I'm trying to remember of the name. I think it stands for Center for Accessible, CAE? Yep, CAE, Center for Accessible Education. So I don't deal with them a lot. Our Office of Student Affairs is sort of the conduit between our students and that office, and they work with them to provide the appropriate accommodations that a student needs on exams, whether that could be extra time, whether that could be a private room, whatever the situation might be. So we really work with UCLA on that. There's tons. So there's a whole academic support program for one, which we could talk about. For two, there's an Office of Student Affairs that does all kinds of programming that provides support. For three, for mental health counseling and support, there is counseling available in the law school itself, a part of the UCLA counseling program, but they come and have hours in the law school itself. So there are mentorship programs, both formal and informal, a student mentorship program, an alumni mentor program. Many of the student organizations, like the one that Zach holds, are providing mentorship to students. So those are just some of the things that come to mind. I mean, when I was in law school, there was no, I feel so old saying this, but there was no therapy dogs for exam time.
Hey, they're therapy ponies now.
therapy ponies, no massages, but they really try to make it a supportive environment. There's jazz in the courtyard sometimes, there's yoga. There's a lot to try to help you keep your stress level down.
Yeah, I mean, I think Dean Schwartz hit it. Like, I don't know, for me, it seems kind of gimmicky sometimes. I laugh at it, but, I'm just a salty old man at this point, Yeah, that's
it's all
just
relative.
Yeah, like for me, I find a lot of it to me is a little gimmicky, but people get value out of it clearly, or else they wouldn't have it. For veterans specifically, of course, we have our veteran student group, but more importantly, the West LA VA is just literally almost across the street from UCLA. So if you are on VA healthcare or have other combat-related issues, I know some of my veteran friends who were also combat vets, they would utilize those services. So those are it's literally a bus ride away or a walk. You can walk there. It's a long walk. It's a 30-minute walk, but you could walk there from UCLA's campus. So UCLA provides one of the best venues for a veteran to be at because you have full access to the VA healthcare and mental health care system, literally a 30-minute walk away from campus, or a bird ride away, or just if you have your car, a car ride away. So absolutely great services there. I know those aren't really law school related, but I don't think there's any other law school that I know of that you can literally take a scooter over to the VA to get your services if you're on those services. And as I said, some UCLA vets have utilized them. I know one good friend of mine who just graduated, he would utilize those services all the time. He was in Afghanistan for a while. He had severe combat trauma, and he would go and utilize the services. And he was, it definitely helped him. And he's now off to do whatever he's going to do. If you want to be a lawyer, yes, because you have to do it. As far as why is the veteran experience at UCLA Law wonderful? I mean, there's very few law schools that are amazing top 20 public law schools in dynamic cities like LA.
Mm-hmm.
There's not one in New York that I know of that is an equivalent. Like you have NYU and Columbia, of course, those are great law schools, but they're private. And therefore you might have GI Bill issues. I don't know if you will, probably not, but you might. So it's a cheaper option. It's in one of the best cities in the world. If you're interested in being in sunny weather near a beach, that was one of my big selling points as superficial as that was. I like to surf, there's my board, right? I like to surf. There's no other law school that's in the top 20 other than maybe USC, and that's even further away from the beach, that you can go surfing at between classes. I don't do that. That's aggressive, but there are people that go surfing between classes at UCLA, So that was a big selling point for me. But as to the cost benefit analysis, it just depends if you want to be a lawyer. I'll say as a veteran from UCLA, if you want to be a lawyer, it's a fantastic platform to do whatever you want to do. I had an outcome and I was lucky and I did work hard, but I think a lot of it's due to UCLA's reputation and also due to me just being a veteran. That was as good as why you would go to Stanford or Yale. I'll be clerking for a federal judge. I'm going to be working after them for one of the large firms. It's a fantastic outcome. I can't complain for a second. And it was all free because I went to a public school that was fully covered by the GI Bill. So it was a great deal for me, and I want to be a lawyer. And if you want to be a lawyer, it's a great opportunity and I highly recommend. If you don't want to be a lawyer though, I would not recommend it.
I do want to mention, UCLA is one of the top law schools, but we're also one of the top schools for veterans. We were just ranked number 4 in the U.S. by U.S. News and World Report. So in terms of services and support, you're in a really good spot in the sense that you have, not only do you have law school services and support, but you also have services and support from our Veterans Center and also the West LA VA, as Zach mentioned. So we do have folks who come, we do have a counselor that comes to do hours similar to what Zach had mentioned at the School of Law, that comes to our office and does hours. He's a veteran himself and, provides kind of that background and experience and can relate to folks in that way. We do also have a vocational rehabilitation counselor who is assigned to UCLA and works in our office 3 days a week. And so she can provide both benefit counseling and then also, mental health support as well. And she is a VA employee. So if there's any questions about how much benefit do I have left, and looking up things in your record, she's able to help you with that, which is really nice. We are the only UC that has that, and really, really fortunate of that resource. And right before we went on to break, we were in talks about bringing a VA therapist to our campus 1 day a week also. So although it's, only a half an hour bird ride to the West LA VA, or 10 minutes in the car if you make all lights, and 2 miles, but we were considering bringing that to campus. We are fully remote now, and that is the plan. And we're in talks about fall and maybe coming back partially, but we're not quite sure yet. Things are changing every day here in Los Angeles, and Department of Public Health orders are too. So, but that was a possibility, and it still is on the table, just obviously not in the remote environment in the same way.
What was the law school's response to BLM George Floyd? Well, we could have a whole session on that. There's been a lot of responses. We've actually had several webinars on that very topic, on police brutality. There are I think I mentioned this earlier, UCLA, one of the specializations is the critical race studies program, which really delves into a lot of this. And one of our professors, Joanna Schwartz, no relation to me, is an expert on police brutality, police accountability. She teaches a course called Suing the Police. So we've had a couple of webinars and sessions around that. I think this also happened when, I'm trying to remember, everything is kind of a blur, but I think our students were already, we were not in session at that time. And so my guess is that when the students come back, there will be more discussions about this. Some of the student organizations will sponsor some talks, bring in some alumni. If anybody's interested in watching some of these things, they may have been recorded. You can follow up with me. I can put you in touch with the alumni office that sponsored some of the talks, and with the director of CRS too.
I do see a question. Do you consider military veteran status in the application process?
We definitely do. It's certainly viewed as a positive in the admissions process. And so, again, it's not like there's a point system and, you have this GPA, but you were in the military, so you're getting points or anything like that. It's a holistic review with people reviewing it. Every year we enroll as part of our class people who've served in the military, veterans. So it's definitely viewed as a positive. And is there recruiting in law school? I'm not sure if you're talking about, I assume what you mean is recruiting for jobs afterwards. And yes, there are about 400 employers a year that visit the law school, including about 200 just during a 1-week process that we call on-campus interviews. What is the percentage of student veterans admitted into law school? I don't know that offhand. There are not tons of veterans that apply, but I have no reason to think it's significantly different than our overall admit rate.
Are there any questions that
we did not ask?
Yeah, that think would be beneficial, or knowledge that would be beneficial for the betterment of the group? This is my favorite question. What that I should know?
Gosh, you asked a lot of really good questions. So there's like nothing major that's jumping out at me that I usually get asked that somebody didn't. I know somebody asked about the personal statement and the writing sample, and we didn't really get into that. So I guess I would just say that the writing sample on the LSAT is definitely important. It's something that you should not disregard, but it does give us an opportunity to see your writing skills under pressure, which is something you need to do in law school. And the personal statement is very important too, because it gives us an opportunity to know a little bit more about who you are, a little bit about your story, about what you bring to the table. I recommend treating it as if you were coming in for an interview. What would you want the admissions committee to know about you? I think somewhere in there should be something about why you want to go to law school, but every law school is different. So you want to read the instructions pretty carefully. That was the one topic that I know somebody asked about that I realized we didn't really touch upon. And I guess the other thing is I just encourage you to visit law schools when you can, either virtually or if possible in person, because it's so important to find a good fit where you think you're going to be happy and thrive and do well, because that's going to impact your future more than anything else. I would say be straight to the point and direct. You don't have to try to impress us with flowery language, as you put it. Just answer the question that's asked. And we recognize that it is a challenge, that it's under time constraints, but just take it seriously was my point. We do read them. And so you definitely want to answer the question and give us your thoughts about the prompt. It's always the same thing. I mean, it's a different subject, but it's always, you have two choices and you advocate for one or the other based on the facts they provide.
On the personal statement, you said, share us a little bit about like what you would discuss in an interview. Do you have any tips in terms of things that have stood out in veterans or military connected students applications, or, qualities that you look for?
Well, I think I would just say, I can't think of one off the top of my head. I mean, just interesting stories about what people have experienced in their lives in general, and then especially as veterans serving in the military, and how it's brought them to this point in their lives and why they want to go to law school. Most personal statements are very interesting and enjoyable to read, but you want to tie it together to why you want to go to law school, because many times there are countless times I'll read a statement, or someone on our committee will read a statement, and we think to ourselves, why did we just read that? What was the point of that? Also, though, keep in mind, you don't know who's going to be reading this, right? There are different people part of the admissions committee, and sometimes I'll read, one person on the committee will say, I didn't like the personal statement, or I didn't understand the point, and then I'll read it and I'll think, wow, this was great. So, obviously people can differ on how they think about these things. So you just want to be yourself, and you'll find a school that'll be a good fit.
For those who've been to multiple schools, do you compute the GPA together or only from the location which you received your undergraduate degree?
So we don't compute the GPA. The Law School Admissions Council calculates a GPA for you when you send in your transcripts. And when you've been at multiple schools, they actually calculate two GPAs. One is your cumulative GPA from all of the schools, and the other is your degree granting GPA from the school where you're going to have your degree. The GPA that we report as our median is the cumulative GPA. So I guess you could say on some level maybe that matters more, but not necessarily. I mean, it really just depends on the circumstances of the application. And if you've been to more than two schools, I mean, you could be at 10 schools. They're going to give you a cumulative GPA of all your work, and then just one degree GPA from the school where you got your degree.
Okay, and then
I definitely talk about your military service. I mean, you don't have to, but if that would be a very interesting statement to read about in a personal statement. That's a totally acceptable topic.
And do you prefer in the personal statement that it's something like more of a creative storytelling, or do you want it kind of straight to the point by the reader?
Could be personal preference. I think sometimes people try too hard to be impressive or to be creative. Just be yourself. Be straight to the point. Don't rack your brain over trying to write the most interesting thing we've ever read. Just, be yourself, and it will be interesting because you all are interesting. Everybody has something that's different that they're going to bring to the table.
My computer's kind of laggy, so sorry if it's breaking up. But as far as it may be a rumor, but as far as like for the USA News, do they like as far as the reporting, do they not include the lowest 25% to get the grade?
No, that's definitely a rumor. We have to report all scores of everybody who enrolls. We give so we do that. US News is just they rank schools, so they decide what they want to consider, and they consider the median. But the American Bar Association says that we have to report our 25th percentile, our median, and our 75th percentile, which I think is good because it gives you an indication of the range of scores of people that we admit. But we can't exclude anybody from those lists. So anybody who enrolls, we report. There are people who enroll who don't have an LSAT score. They have a GRE score. So they're obviously excluded from the calculation for that purpose. There are people that enroll that don't have a GPA because they were educated internationally, and the Law School Admissions Council doesn't calculate their GPA. One resource that you may want to look at is called the ABA 509 reports. Every school has one, and it gives you tons of detail for each school. Tuition, enrollment, class size. But one of the things is how many students are in the calculation of the median LSATs and median GPAs. But you'll see, like, most of the students are included. Those are the only people that are excluded, or people that don't have one. We do have to report all scores.
How can I better prepare for law school being a STEM major? Is there a certain course that you would advise I take?
That's a great question. I would recommend taking at least some classes that involve some writing, some research. If you can get a letter from a professor where you did some writing, that could be helpful. But just the fact that you are a STEM major is also going to be viewed favorably in the law school application process. There are not enough lawyers with STEM backgrounds. They are very much in demand, especially engineering degrees, people that want to go in intellectual property law or patent law. So that can be a very positive thing.
And at UCLA, we do have a special class for veterans that's a writing class with Dr. Reed Wilson. So if you're, and he has written many letters of recommendation and can also help you with your application. So that's another way that's a great class to take if you need some writing experience as well. Question for you, aside from the LSAT, what's the single most important thing we can do to increase our chances of being accepted to law school?
Well, since you're only giving me one choice, right? One single thing.
Yeah.
I'm going to say have the highest grades you can have, right? I mean, that's going to be the most significant thing you can do.
Thank you so much for
Sure.
For joining us today and sharing all about the law school and strategy with applying to law school. So we really
I hope you're all still interested.
Yeah.
Hopefully we didn't turn anybody away from law school.
Yeah, but thank you so much for your time, and thank you everybody for joining us.
Thank you for coming, and go Army. Take care, everybody.
Thanks, Zach. It was good to see you.
Zach.
Stay safe and healthy, everybody. It was nice to see you.
Yes, stay safe and healthy. And please reach out if you've got any questions.